This is our second snow of this fairly early winter season. They've promised that it will be a mild one here, but being 2020, who knows, what's going to go on there. I managed to get a trip down to southern Utah, down to Virgin, and then into St. George, and then into Mesquite, Nevada, about 3 or 4 weeks ago. I'll tell you a little bit about that in this episode. But the main concept, the main point of this episode is to talk to you about our Pacific Northwest tour, going from Spokane, then on to Glacier National Park. That coming up right after this. Bye. Love you. A lot of water under this bridge as far as UTADV is concerned, and trying to go through and recount our trip from last June. Here we are sliding into the middle of November with a pretty good snowstorm going on, and I still haven't been able to go through and wrap things up. So I'm down to two legs here, one being the Spokane to Glacier National Park, and then the last one being from Glacier National Park to West Yellowstone, and then our unfortunate early stopping of the trip because of a mechanical issue that we had with the Tiger that way. And we'll talk about that in the next episode, which will be kind of the last installment of the PNW tour here. For this one, though, for this leg, we started off in Spokane. We spent the night there at a KOA on the eastern side of the city and got off to a pretty early start. Made our way across on I-95 across the panhandle of Idaho, and we picked up, the 135 then in Montana, and made our way up past Flathead Lake onto Glacier National Park, at least that area around there. The ride was beginning to take its toll, I think, on both of us. Addie had an especially hard time being buffeted by the winds and not having the windscreen, and had some other issues going on as well. It was just kind of beating the morale out of us, and just had a hard time trying to maintain the momentum and the energy and the excitement. And at this point, we were, 6 days, I think, into the ride. And having really fared the worst of it as far as weather and roads and things like that were concerned. But it just all seemed to be catching up to us. So we stopped at a little resort town next to Flathead Lake and kind of got our legs back under us a little bit. Some self-talk and some encouragement with each other, plus a good lunch always helps out there as well. And the idea was to get to Glacier National Park and get into the park and get into the campground there and find a place to camp. And as we did, realizing that despite the conditions of COVID-19, the park was still packed and we weren't able to find any place. So much to, I think, Addie's relief and mine as well, we did find the Glacier KOA there, and instead of finding a campsite, we decided to spoil ourselves a little bit and get a cabin and warm up and stretch out and relax and kind of call an early end to that day. We had a wonderful dinner that night and enjoyed the amenities of heat and a shower and plumbing, those kinds of things. And then got up early in the morning and made our way before 7 o'clock into the park, into Glacier National Park. And we got onto the main road that goes through there past Lake McDonald. We did find a road that took us off the main highway that goes around Lake McDonald and further into Glacier National Park. And I got onto a Forest Service road and rode that around the north side of the lake for a bit and took in the sights there and enjoyed ourselves immensely. We were able to get back to the western part of the lake where we had a couple of photo ops there. Nobody had gotten onto the lake at that point, so it was still like glass, and so we're able to go through and release some iconic pictures there and really enjoyed our time. Glacier provided for us the kind of moments that you search for in this kind of adventure motorcycle riding, where you're isolated in what might otherwise be a very populated place as far as tourism and campers and hikers and that kind of thing is concerned. But we had that area to ourselves, really, nobody else around. And we're able to raise our level of connection as far as riders and father and daughter and that kind of thing, and be able to let go of the angst and the fatigue that we were starting to experience from that day previous. It really went through and gave us a good fix. And how could you not there in such a spectacular place? So I mentioned my ride down to southern Utah. I think it was about 4 weeks ago, realizing that obviously the weather is going to be starting to close in on where I'm living here and on the trails and the accessibility, that kind of thing. So I went down to southern Utah and I made my way out to what used to be a little known dispersed camping area just on the south side of the little town of Virgin, Utah. And there's a couple ways you can get there. You can go through Virgin or on your way to Virgin and pick up the Sheep Bridge Road, or you can go through the little town of Hurricane, Utah, and it's Hurricane, not Hurricane, so we're all aware of that. It's becoming a lot more well-known now because finding a good spot out there that night for me was a little harder to come by. In fact, I kind of had to leave the beaten trail, and I went off on a deer trail to go through and find a better place, just kind of away from everything, to set up my tent and camp for the night. That's one of the area's better places to camp because the view that looks back on the whole skyline of the southern part of Zion National Park is spectacular, especially at sunset. So if you're looking for a place outside of Zion National Park, it's about 14 miles outside of that area, just south of Virgin River. Pick up the Sheep Bridge Road, and that will take you out to some pretty good dispersed camping, all right? Especially right now, maybe, with winter conditions coming on. That area doesn't get snow like what we do up here in northern Utah. I've been able to camp down there year-round, really, and not be affected by inclement weather. It does get cold. It gets down to the 30s, so you need the proper sleeping gear to go through and keep you insulated. But outside of that, it's no big deal. All right. So I hope you've enjoyed this quick episode of UTADV. On the next episode, we'll wrap this Pacific Northwest tour up, finally. My apologies for taking so long to do so. Life does what it does, right? And kind of gets in the way of things. But we'll talk about going from Glacier National Park to Yellowstone, or West Yellowstone, and then deciding to abort our trip because of a radiator coolant leak on this Tiger here that's since been repaired. That's what's coming up in our next episode. Glad to have you with me once again, and as always, if you like what's going on here, let me know if you would, and if you haven't subscribed to us yet, I'd sure love to have you along for the ride.